Boker Tov, Good Yontif, Shana Tova, Gamar Chatima Tova. We welcome you again this morning to the JCP Community Service for Yom Kippurim. It is a great honor to be together with you as we began our Day of Atonement last evening with Kol Nidre. And we continue our services, our reflections, our introspection. Many of us are fasting for this holy day as is prescribed by our tradition, and we ask that your fast be a meaningful one, that your introspection of the meditations of your souls and your hearts be a meditation that leads you to a path of goodness and kindness and justice and peace. I'm honored to be joined in this Yom Kippur service by JCP's Rabbi Deena Gottlieb and our Cantor in Residence, Galeet Dardashti. We're going to continue with Elohai Neshama on page 75.
And we are so honored that you're spending this day of introspection and atonement with us. And as we begin, I'd like to offer a reflection from Rabbi Louis Camras. What an extraordinary gift it is, what a blessing, to have been raised by imperfect parents who did their very best, to share our life with a partner who is no more flawed than we are, to count as a friend one who understands and accepts us most of the time. How brave and how hard it is to be good enough in our ties to one another, to give even when we're exhausted, to love faithfully, to receive with grace the love imperfectly offered to us. Perhaps Yom Kippur can set us free from the tyranny of our expectations. Perhaps Yom Kippur can release us from fantasies impossible to fulfill. We'll continue as an introduction to our morning prayers with verses from Psalm 51, Lev Tahor, in which we express our desire for God to help us see the good in ourselves, in others, and in the world.
Lev Tahor bara li Elohim veruach nachon chadesh bekirbi al tashlicheni קודשך אל תיקח ממני לב טהור ברא לי אלוהים ורוח נכון חדש בקרבי אל תשליכני מלפניך ורוח קודשך אל תיקח
We continue with Elohai Neshama on page 75.
Elohai נשמה שנתת בי טהורה היא. אלוהי 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 נשמה שנתת בי טהורה היא.
As we give thanks for the gift of our soul and our spirit, which we focus on this day of Yom Kippur, we turn now to the morning blessings on page 76.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם.
Who gave us the understanding to distinguish between day and night.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם.
Who made me in your image.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם.
Who made me a Jew.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם.
Who created me to be free.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם.
Who opens the eyes of the blind.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם.
Who clothes the naked.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם.
Who frees the bound.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם.
Who raises us up when we're bent over.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם.
Who establishes dry ground upon the waters.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם.
Who enables me to meet all my needs.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם.
Who sets us out on the right path.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם.
Who empowers the people of Israel with courage.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם.
Who crowns the people Israel with glory.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם.
Who gives us strength when we are weary.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם.
Who wipes the sleep away from my eyes and the slumber from my eyelids.
Amen.
Baruch She'amar, page 97.
Baruch She'amar b'olam, Baruch hu, Baruch bodeh u'matzil, Baruch hu, Baruch Shemo.
Page 119, Psalm 150, where we praise God with the shouts of Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, 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 El b'kodsho, hallelujah, b'kiyahuzo, hallelujah. השופר, הללו בנבל וכינור, הללו בטוב ומחול, הללו במינים ועוגב, הללו, 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 בצלצלי שמה, הללו, בצלצלי תרועה, כל הנשמה תהלליה, הללו, הללויה, הללו, 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 הללו,
We continue with Hamelech. We proclaim God as sovereign over all on this day of Yom Kippur on page 125.
המלך היושב על כיסא רם ונישא שוכן עד מרום וקדוש שמו וכתוב רננות צדיקים באדוני לישרים נבע תהילה בפי ישרים תתרומם ובדברי צדיקים תתברך ובלשון חסידים תתקדש ובקרב קדושים תתהלל. ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו האל המלך הגדול והקדוש בשמיים ובארץ כי לך נאה ברוך אתה אדוני המלך גדול בתשבחות אל ההודעות אדון הנפלאות הבוחר בשירי זמרה מלך מלכי עולמים Amen.
We stand this day, all of us, in the presence of our God, youth and elders, people of all genders, to those close to tradition and those who have been estranged. All are welcome in this community of prayer. Around the world, all Israel greets this holy day. We stand with them, a people united by our history and fate, linked in mind and heart to generations past, who stood before God to be cleansed of their sins in Russia and Poland and Germany and Spain, in Morocco, in Egypt, in Brazil, in India, and here in the United States. Our great-grandparents are here with us today, and our great-great-grandchildren as well. All are present in memory and hope. We stand this sacred morning, all of us, as one. We turn to page 131 for the Barhu, the call to prayer.
Yai
is the creator of light with Yotzer Or.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Yotze or uvorech choshech, ose shalom shalom uvorech et hakol. Or olam ve'otzar chaim, orot me'ofel amar vayehi.
We continue on page 148, V'ha'er einenu.
והאר לנו בתורתך, ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך, ויחד לבבנו לאהבה וליראה את שמך, ולא נבוש ולא ניכלם ולא ניכשל לעולם ועד, כי בשם קודשך הגדול והנורא בטחנו, נגילה ונשמחה, נגילה ונשמחה בישועתך. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל.
We turn to the Shema, page 150.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod, Shem Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך. We continue with Mi Chamocha, a prayer of freedom and redemption, on page 159.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אליהם, נורא תהילות אוסף אליהם. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אליהם, נורא את שמו קדוש ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
As we prepare to hear the words again in this season of the days of awe, the words of Avinu Malkeinu, we call to our hearts the metaphor of God as parent, not a distant parent, but as our parent, as the source of life who brought us into the world. That parent who brings us into the world links us down to the generations past, and we ourselves reach out and grab hold of that sense of responsibility for generations into the future. And so it's appropriate that the words that we just sang, Tzur Yisrael, Rock of Israel, calling out to that Avinu Malkeinu, to rise up to Ezrat Yisrael, to the aid, to the love, to the strength and support of the Jewish people. Ufdechinu mecha Yehuda ve'Yisrael, just as the God of the past spoke to our ancestors, so in this moment of Avinu Malkeinu on Yom Kippurim, we may merit hearing God's voice and respond in kind, dedicating ourselves to live lives of goodness and kindness. We continue with Avinu Malkeinu on page 177.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Koleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Hamol Aleinu. Yalol Aleinu v'tapeinu. Avinu Malkeinu Galeet Dardashti v'cherev erav me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu Galeet Dardashti u'mastin me'aleinu.
It is now my honor to introduce to you, joining our JCP Yom Kippur services, our President, Stacy Pollack, for a Yom Kippur greeting.
Lishana Tova. I'm Stacy Pollack, President of the Board of JCP. It's a real honor for me to be in this role and speaking to you today. As I said last week, even though we can't be in person to celebrate these high holidays, it is still wonderful to be able to gather as a community, no matter what form that takes. I'm so grateful that technology gives us the chance to be together and, even through a screen, to feel the warmth and spirit of JCP, led by Rabbi Deena, Rabbi Andy, and Cantor Galeet. Thank you all for joining us. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur offer an opportunity to reflect on our past year and look forward to a new one. As we all think back on a year of challenges, I hope we also can focus on all the good that has happened in 2021. We're already off to a wonderful start of in-person learning in the Early Childhood Center and the Hebrew School. And we've managed to have many meaningful life cycle events, both online and in person, that honor the magnitude of those moments. JCP goes on, under any circumstances, continuing to be a steadfast center for Jewish life downtown. It is a place for spirituality and services, for education, for cultural experiences and celebrations, but equally as important is its vital place as the foundation of our neighborhoods. JCP stands for Jewish Community Project, and that's just what it is. Being a part of JCP brings joy, friendship, and a sense of belonging to us all, making this big city in which we live feel so much smaller. As the JCP community, we must continually work hard to sustain this special place, this amazing and innovative idea that has become such an integral part of all of our lives. Please make sure to support JCP so that it can continue to maintain its meaningful place in our hearts, thrive, and grow into the future. Wishing you all an easy fast and a happy and healthy new year. Shana Tova and Gamar Tov. May you be sealed in the book of life for a year of blessings.
Reflections and for your incredible leadership of our community. We turn now to the Torah service on page 517.
Ein kamocha, Elohim Adonai, ve'ein kema'asecha, malchutcha, malchut kol olamim, u'memshaltecha bechol dor v'ador. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed, Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom, av ha'rachamim hitiv v'rtzonecha et Zion. Tivne chomot Yerushalayim, Tivne chomot Yerushalayim, ki v'chad levad batachnu, melech el ram נוצר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע וחטא ונקה. אדוני, אדוני, אל רחום וחנון, ערך אפיים ורב חסד ואמת, נוצר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע וחטא ונקה. אדוני, אדוני, אל רחום וחנון, ערך אפיים ורב חסד ואמת, נוצר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע וחטא ונקה. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אחד אלוהינו, גדול אדוננו, קדוש ונורא שמו. אחד אלוהינו, גדול אדוננו, קדוש ונורא שמו. גדול אדוני איתי, ונרוממה שמו. יחדיו לך אדוני הגדולה והגבורה והתפארת והנצח וההון, כי כל בשמיים ובארץ, כי כל בשמיים ובארץ, לך אדוני הממלכה, וימיט נעשה לכל לראש. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו, רוממו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו, רוממו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו.
Each year, during the High Holy Days, we at JCP have a special tradition of inviting members of our community to speak about their connection to JCP and to share what they love most about our community. On this Yom Kippur, we are honored to feature Carrie Golden. Carrie, as well as her entire family, are pillars of our community, and I invite you now to hear more about Carrie's Jewish journey and her connection to JCP.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Carrie Golden. I'm a member of JCP's community and also a member of the JCP Board of Directors. I came to JCP 10 years ago when my daughter, Ellery, started preschool in the Apple Room. Probably, like many of you, we came to JCP for the school, but we got so much more than school. This past August was a milestone in my life. It marked the moment when I was Jewish for more than half of my life. 23 years ago in New Orleans, Louisiana, at a small modern Orthodox synagogue, I converted to Judaism. And I just told you all how old I am. That moment marked a spiritual milestone for me. After searching for several years and studying for several more, I finally was going to be my authentic self. The synagogue in New Orleans where I studied and ultimately converted was very tight-knit, but they welcomed me with open arms, and I became close with some of the members, including the rabbi and his family. Shortly after I converted, I moved to New York for law school. I was sad to say goodbye to the community at Beth Israel, but excited for the Jewish community and life that awaited me in New York. For I was going from a city with a very small number of Jews to New York, of all places, where all the Jews lived. Of course there would be a place for me. I would find my community. It wasn't even a question in my mind. I got involved in Jewish life on NYU's campus. I'm pretty sure I was the first Thompson to ever be president of the Jewish Law Student Association. I ate my share of New York bagels, had Chinese food, and went to the movies on Christmas for the first time, and did the things that New York Jews do. But I didn't have a spiritual community. Several years later, I met my husband, Danny, who was also adrift in the Jewish New York spiritual sea. So we went shul shopping. We ended up at a beautiful synagogue uptown and were married by the rabbi there, but we knew we would never really be involved. It wouldn't be ours. Because even though I had only been a New Yorker for 6 years at that point, even I knew the subways were always under construction on a Friday night and most certainly Saturday mornings, and there was no parking on the Upper West Side, ever. So I resigned myself to having a place to go for the high holidays with an amazing cantor and a beautiful sanctuary. And for the rest of the year, my Judaism was a personal, solitary experience. Except for the holiday dinners when Danny's very culturally New York Jewish family declared that I made the best matzo ball soup. And that was fine, but I longed for spiritual connection, for community. I knew it existed somewhere, but I hadn't found it, or at least one that felt right for me. That changed when I, like many other anxious first-time preschool applicant parents, panicked and added one more preschool to an already obnoxiously long list of schools we were applying Ellery to. We live in Soho, and I didn't know much about schools south of Canal, but the website looked good, and frankly, I was getting nervous about the stats. I know how ridiculous that sounds now. So we threw our hat in the ring at JCP, and you know the rest of the story. From the moment Ellery started school, I knew it was the community for us. Aside from everyone being welcoming, the people involved in the community were looking for and had created something different, something unique. JCP danced to the beat of its own drum, did things the way that felt good to them. It was authentic. In many ways, I felt like the community reflected who I was, doing something different that felt right for me. It was a little scrappy, a little experimental, flexible, open-minded, and inclusive. There were families of all types and backgrounds. Some families weren't Jewish at all, even board members. I knew it was a community that would never question my background and would accept my entire non-Jewish family. And it has lived up to that and even more. I have studied with rabbis at JCP. I've gotten involved in events, big and small. I've made close, lifelong friends, as has Ellery. JCP has celebrated with me at joyous occasions and has supported me through dark times. I lost a parent after a brief illness in 2014, and the support and warmth of the community was incredible. I think I would still be eating the food that the Kindness Committee sent to the Shiva. There was that much. Ellery will be celebrating her bat mitzvah in March, and I cannot imagine any other place for her to become a Jewish adult. The values of inclusion, authenticity, kindness, and community abound, and I can truly say that with JCP, I have finally found my Jewish home for myself and my family. I know that there are many people watching today that feel the same way that I do, and others who perhaps haven't committed to the community yet. To you, I encourage you to get more involved with JCP. Attend an event, become a member, join a committee. Whatever you give to JCP, JCP will return to you tenfold. As the very wise Rabbi Jonathan Sachs has said, community is the expression of divine love. It is where I am valued simply for who I am, how I live, and what I give to others. It is the place where they know my name. JCP knows my name. Happy New Year to all of you. May your year be blessed with health and happiness. Shana Tova.
Carrie, for sharing your story and your inspiring words and for being part of our community. We are so fortunate that so many of our community members, including middle school and high school students, adults, and members of our staff, have volunteered to chant Torah during our service this morning. It's my honor to invite all of you at home to join us in reciting the Aliyah, the blessing, over the reading of the Torah, and then to enjoy their incredible Torah chanting. The Aliyah is on page 521, and the Torah readings can be found on pages 528 through 537.
Baruchu et Adonai Hamvorach, Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam va'ed, Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam va'ed, Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato, Baruch ata Adonai noten haTorah.
Vayedaber Adonai el Moshe Aharei Mod Shnei B'nei Aharon B'korvatam Lifnei Adonai Vayamutu.
Vayomer Adonai el Moshe Daber el Haron Ahiha Vayavot B'hol Eit el HaKodesh Nibeit La Parohet El Panei Hakapuret Asher El Haron V'lo Yamu Ki Pe'anat Eret Al Hakapuret Bezort Yavu Aharon El Hakodesh Bifar Ben Barkan Latat Ve'ayil Leolam. Amen. Ketene Bar Kodesh Yilba Yumi Nefet Bar Yehiyu Abasaro Uvav Nefet Bar Yagor Uvmit Nefet Bar Yitno Big De Kodesh Haim Verahat Bamayim at Besaro Ubesham Umeid Adab B'nei Yisrael Ika Sinai Seirei Yizim Machatat Ve'il Ahar Le'olah Ve'chikev Aharo at Par Hahatat Asher Lo Ve'chiper Ba'ado Uva Beito.
Amen. Velakach Eshnei Hasirim Vehemi Otam Lifnei Adonai Petach Ohel Moed Venatan Aharon Al Shnei Hasirim Goralot Goral Echad Ladonai Vegoral Echad La'azazel Vihikriv Aharon Et Asair Asher Allah Alav Hagoral Adonai Ve'asahu Hatat Ve'asai Asher Allah Alav Hagoral לעזאזל, יעמד חי לפני אדוני לכפר עליו, ושלח אותו לעזאזל המדברך, והקריב אהרון את פר החטאת אשר לו, והיפר בעדו ובעד ביתו, ושחט את פר החטאת אשר לו.
אמן. ולקח מלוא המחתה, ככלי אש, מעל המזבח מלפני אדוני, ומלוא כפניו כתורת סמים דקה, והביא מבית לפרוכת, ונתן את הכתורת על האש לפני אדוני, וכיסה ענן הכתורת את הכפורת אשר על העדות ולא ימות. ולקח מדם הפר והיזה באצבעו על פני הכפורת קדמה, ולפני הכפורת יזה 7 פעמים מן הדם באצבעו, ושחט את שאיר החטאת אשר לעם, והביא את דמו אל מבית לפרוכת, ועשה את דמו כאשר עשה לדם הפר, והיזה אותו על הכפורת ולפני הכפורת, וכיפר על הקודש מטומאות בני ישראל ומפשעיהם לכל חטאותם, וכן יעשה לאוהל מועד השוכן איתם בתוך טומאתם, וכל אדם לא יהיה באוהל מועד בבוא לכפר בקודש עד צאתו, וכיפר בעדו ובעד ביתו ובעד כל קהל ישראל.
אמן. ויצא אל המזבח אשר לפני אדוני וכיפר עליו, ולקח מדם הפר ומדם השעיר, ונתן על קרנות המזבח סביב, והיזה עליו מן הדם באצבעו 7 פעמים, וטיהרו וקידשו מטומאות בני ישראל, וכילה מכפר את הקודש ואת עול המועד ואת המזבח, והקריב את השעיר החי, ושמח אהרון את 2 ידיו על ראש השעיר החי, והתוודה עליו את כל עוונות בני ישראל, ואת כל פשעיהם לכל חטאותם, ונתן אותם על ראש השעיר, ושילח ביד איש איתי המדברה, ונשא השעיר עליו את כל עוונותם על ארץ גזירה, ושילח את השעיר במדבר, ובא אהרון אל אוהל המועד, ופשט את בגדי הבד אשר לבש בבואו לקודש, והניחם שם, ורחץ את בשרו במים במקום קדוש, ולבש את בגדיו, ויצא ועשה תולתו ואת תולת העם, וכיפר בידו ובעד העם.
ואת חלב החטאת יקטיר המזבחה, והמשלח את השעיר לעזאזל, יכבס בגדיו, ורחץ את בשרו במים, ואחרי כן יבוא אל המחנה.
ואת פר החטאת, ואת שעיר החטאת, אשר הובא את דמם, לכפר בקודש, יוציא אל מחוץ למחנה, ושרפו באש את אורתם ואת בשרם ואת פרשם, והשורף אותם יכבס בגדיו, ורחץ את בשרו במים, ואחרי כן יבוא אל המחנה.
והייתה להם Lehukat Olam Bahodesh Hashivi Ba'asor Lahodesh Ta'anu Et Nafshotehem V'chol Mlaha Lo Ta'asu Ha'ezra V'hager Hagar B'tochem.
Ki bayom hazeh yechaper alechem v'taher etchem mikol chatotechem lifnei Adonai titaru. Shabbat Shabbaton hi lachem beinatem et nafshotechem chukat olam.
V'chiper hakohen asher yimshach oto va'asher yemale et yado lachahen tachat aviv ve'lavash et bigdei habad bigdei hakodesh v'chiper et mikdash hakodesh ve'et ohel moed ve'et hamizbeach yechaper ve'al hakohanim ve'al kol am hakahal yechaper ve'haita zot lachem lechukat olam lechaper al bnei Yisrael mikol chatotam achat bashana bayas ka'asher tziva Adonai et Moshe.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. We turn our thoughts now to those in need of healing. And these lines, Anna, Elna, Rifana, La, please God, heal her now, are from the Torah itself. It's one of the shortest, but also most powerful prayers for healing. And we offer it today to all those who are in need.
We remember in particular those at this time: Sivan Roth, Stacy Lefton, George Usden, Lisa Buckstein, Daba Liba, and Devora Tehila.
In the presence of our Torah scroll, we recite a prayer for our country, as Jews all over the world have been doing for thousands of years. We think about the United States and all nations of the world, and you can find the prayer for our country on insert number 5. Guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace. May we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and spirit. And we say, Amen.
Amen.
As we recite a prayer for the state of Israel, we aspire to realize a world in which this prayer for peace can become a reality. O Heavenly One, protector and redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love. Spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. And we say, Amen.
Amen.
We return the Torah to the Ark with Eitz Chaim on page 569.
כי לקח טוב נתתי לכם תורתי אל תעזוב עץ חיים היא למחזיק עמה ותומכיה מאושר דרכיה דרכי נועם וכל נתיבותיה שלום השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה חדש חדש ימינו חדש ימינו כקדם.
This past year, I have had the honor of working with several conversion students, and I have been truly amazed at the commitment, dedication, and insight of these students from all different cultural and religious backgrounds who are choosing to tie their fates to the destiny of the Jewish people. Guiding people as they enter the sacred covenant between God and the people of Israel through the Torah is one of the most meaningful parts of my life. Recently, in talking about Israel, one of these amazing students summarized its complexities in one of the best and most succinct ways I've ever heard. She said, Israel is a small country with big news. The news from Israel has only grown bigger, more complex, and more painful over the course of the past few months. The devastating war in May heightened suspicion, fear, and animosity for Israelis and Palestinians on both sides of the conflict, and has tragically led to the disturbing increase in anti-Semitic rhetoric and attacks in our country and throughout the world. Though many of us have lived through periods of tragic violence in Israel before, this war felt different from those of the past. In fact, this seems to be the only thing that people on both sides of the conflict can agree upon. In an article that appeared in the foreword in May, the journalist Arno Rosenfeld outlined some of the changes in the American Jewish community that might have contributed to the different feeling that this war allowed all of us to feel. Some of them include the election of Donald Trump, which drew more liberals into political issues. Others include the police murder of George Floyd last May that sparked a wave of racial justice protests and prompted millions of Americans to consider previously obscure demands. Another is the years-long work of Palestinians and their supporters to convince the broader progressive movement to speak out. Other journalists cite the impact of social media on the changing narrative around Israel. The journalist Alex Ward writes, from making solidarity videos on TikTok, to using Twitter to organize international protests, to posting videos on Instagram showing airstrikes, Palestinians and those around the world sympathetic to their plight have made social media a central weapon in the narrative fight against Israel. Some are calling this past war the TikTok Intifada. And of course, Intifada is the Arabic word for uprising. This has a huge impact on young people, many of whom get their news exclusively from social media and who don't know that much about Israel's complicated history and politics. In a recent episode of the podcast called For Heaven's Sake, Daniel Hartman and Yossi Klein Halevi of the Shalom Hartman Institute talk about how this war was so difficult for diaspora Jews because world opinion about Israel really has changed so drastically. They believe that most people who talk about Israel no longer have the patience to hold and understand the nuance of one of the world's most complicated conflicts. Another issue adding to the challenge is that this war came at a time when we as Americans are awakening to the painful experiences of and hatred expressed toward other minorities in our country. And in the past few months, I've had countless conversations with members of our community who have expressed confusion and vulnerability, feelings that I share. We've talked about the pain that we feel when schools and employers take a stand against anti-Black and anti-Asian racism, but are silent about anti-Semitism. We've talked about the isolation we experience when academic institutions express solidarity with Jews experiencing anti-Semitism, but then revoke those apologies under pressure from outside groups. We've talked about how confusing it feels when our social media feeds are filled with vitriol against Israel, especially when some of us share other values with those who are most outspoken against Israel. We've talked about our fears of the different ways anti-Semitism manifests in political life, from the outspoken anti-Semitism of white supremacists on the political right, to the desire to make hatred of Israel a liberal value expressed by some progressives on the political left. The loneliness and the sense of abandonment by local communities like schools and circles of friends, and national communities like political parties to which we are committed can feel devastating. And for so many of us, myself included, Israel is not just an interesting place to visit, and it's not just another aspect of personal Jewish identity. For me, Israel is my heart and soul. It's part of who I am. It's the only way to put it. And no matter where you fall on the political spectrum, whether you identify as Zionist or not, whether you agree with the actions of the state of Israel or not, Israel is an inevitable part of who we are as Jews. It's part of our collective destiny. When I teach about Judaism, I try to demonstrate how it's different from other Western religions. Judaism is not just a religion, it's a civilization with many different components that make it what it is. There is the religion component, of course, which emphasizes prayer and devotion to God, but there's much more. There's language, literature, both religious and secular, music, philosophy, a national movement, a global history, a robust legal tradition, a blueprint for social change, and so much more. And these pieces come together to create what we know as Judaism. And when I talk about this civilization that we're part of, I often use the analogy of many light switches in a dark room. When we're able to experience all of the components of Judaism, when each of those light switches that make up Jewish civilization is turned on, that is when we experience the richest, fullest Jewish life. That is when the room is fully illuminated. For 2,000 years, since the reign of the Hasmonean dynasty, the descendants of the Maccabees in the Hanukkah story, our national light switch has been turned off. After that dynasty fell, Jews were exiled from the land of Israel, cut off from their homeland, where the Bible promised that they, along with God's presence, would always dwell. And from then on, for painful millennia, until 1948, the Jewish people could only dream of returning to the land of Israel, gaining political sovereignty, and turning that national light switch back on. It's nothing short of a miracle that we as Jews in 2021 live in a world where the political component of Jewish civilization, a Jewish state in our national and spiritual homeland, is a reality. Our Israel light switch has been turned back on, allowing us to live in a world where we can live a fuller Jewish life in a way that our ancestors could only have dreamed. I believe that to be alive at the same time as the state of Israel is one of the greatest privileges a Jew can have. Those who claim that Israel has no right to exist, or that it is a colonial enterprise that needs to be destroyed, don't just claim that a country of 9 million people is somehow illegitimate. Whether they realize it or not, they are also expressing a desire to turn off a light switch of Jewish civilization and to deny Jews the opportunity to live a fully realized Jewish existence as we were forced to do for 2,000 years. That is why it is so imperative that we protect the state of Israel. Israel's existence is intricately tied to our very existence as Jews, both physically, since Israel allows Jews the systemic power and capacity to protect ourselves, and spiritually, since the state of Israel has given us the chance to realize our long dormant national aspirations as a people. None of this is to say that the nation state of Israel is a perfect place. Because it is so important to our religious lives, it is deeply painful when many people who live there are not treated with the dignity that they deserve, and when Jews in the diaspora are blamed for Israel's wrongdoings and therefore become subjects of mistreatment and violence. And as important as our national movement is to our spiritual lives, it is hard to face the reality that other people who live there hold a different narrative, often in competition with our own. In his powerful book entitled Letters to My Palestinian Neighbor by Yossi Klein Halevi, which I strongly encourage everyone to read if you haven't done so yet, he writes to a fictional Palestinian counterpart in order to explain his perspective on the conflict as an Israeli Jew. And in his chapter about narratives, he writes, "There are times I can't bear anymore this disputation between us. Any argument that either of us can offer over history, ideology, politics, seems to contain its counter-argument. How much energy have we wasted trying to prove the justness of our claims and the supposed hollowness of the other's claims? How much of the world's attention has been diverted to this seemingly endless sparring?" Ultimately, he concludes, we need to respect each other's right to tell our own stories. I respect your right to define yourself, and I insist on the same right. That is the way to peace. To me, the validity of these two competing national movements is part of what makes this conflict so difficult to understand and to resolve. And of course, we care not only about how people are treated in the land of Israel, but also here in our own land of promise, the United States. As American Jews, we know what it means for people to hate us because of our identity. And though we might disagree about the steps that we need to take to get there, I know we can all agree that we want to be part of a nation where all people have access to the benefits and gifts of our society, and where no one is afraid that they might experience discrimination or violence because of their national, racial, or religious background or their socioeconomic status. And as a minority community with such a deep and rich heritage, which adds so much meaning to our lives and contributes so much to our society, we Jews of all people understand the importance of creating a world in which other unique identities and cultures can thrive, to enrich the lives of their adherents, and to add their singular contributions and gifts to the world. We Jews are faced with a dichotomy. On the one hand, it's our duty to nurture and protect our particular Jewish experience and community. But on the other, it is also our duty to cultivate a world of equality and dignity for all people. Though this dichotomy that we face is not a new one, it is more exaggerated now than ever for Jews like us who are living in the 21st century. How will we balance the imperative to embrace our own unique identity and all of its component parts with the imperative to create a world where all people, with all of their diverse experiences and beliefs that might be different from our own, are seen as equally valid and are treated with the dignity that they deserve? For the past few months, I have been guided by a maxim spoken by the great Rabbi Hillel in a body of Jewish literature called Pirkei Avot, or Wisdom of Our Ancestors. Pirkei Avot is the most widely studied Jewish text. There are more commentaries on it than there are on the Hebrew Bible. And based on how many of you will recognize this quote, we can understand why. In chapter 1, Hillel says, Im ein ani li mili, uchshe'ani le'atzmi ma ani, v'im lo achshav ematai. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I am only for myself, what am I? And if not now, then when? These words, uttered in the year 200 CE, can help ground and guide us as we navigate the complexities of Jewish life in 2021, and as we enter this new Jewish year of 5782. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? We have a religious obligation to embrace our identities as Jews. If we don't stand up for ourselves, no one will. Our people have learned that the hard way throughout history, most recently during the tragic events of the Holocaust. And this spring, we saw people who don't know that much about Israel or Judaism denigrating the Jewish state as a way to demonstrate other political and social values. Of course, we can and should have questions about, and maybe even criticisms of Israel's conduct. It's our job as Jews to try to make Israel the best place it can possibly be for all its inhabitants. That is a divine mandate. But to falter in our sense of identity and connection to Israel because others say we should goes against what Hillel teaches. We Jews are the only people who can safeguard Israel, our identity, and our own well-being. No one else is coming to our rescue. But of course, Hillel also teaches, on the other hand, if I am only for myself, what am I? Notice that he doesn't say, if I am only for myself, who am I? In Hillel's view, if we concern ourselves solely with our own well-being, we are not fulfilling our obligations as human beings. To sit back as people of other identities and experiences suffer renders us unfeeling, spiritually lifeless, objects instead of subjects. When we feel like we are being attacked, it can be so easy to want to turn inward, to vote solely according to our own interests, and to retreat to a protective, defensive mode. But Hillel asks us to resist that urge and not to protect ourselves at the expense of someone else. He might have appreciated the term allyship as it is used today. We have a duty to stand against injustice perpetrated against all people, even when we have questions about their experiences or don't understand them, and even when it feels inconvenient or difficult. And of course, Hillel finishes by asking, if not now, when? The moment to begin the work is now, for there is much to do. We at JCP are working to fulfill both of these obligations, to protect ourselves, our heritage, and our identity, and also to work toward the dignity and well-being of all people. Throughout our existence, JCP has been committed to preserving and teaching our sacred heritage, making it joyful and relevant to our lives, building a community grounded in Jewish values, and sharing it with the next generation. This has always been at the heart of what JCP is all about. And of course, we are committed to deep and robust engagement and education about Israel and in fighting anti-Semitism. This past spring, we brought speakers who helped us understand the most recent war in Israel. And in the coming months, we plan to spend more time learning and teaching about the 2,000-year history of Israel, its current challenges, and our place in it all. We've also partnered with the Anti-Defamation League so that we can learn about and participate in the fight against anti-Semitism, both in person and online. We are also committed to learning about our role in fighting racism and hatred of all types that occur in Israel and here in the U.S. For this past year, many of us have been engaged in an anti-racism reading group in order to learn more about the experiences of racial minorities in this country and to make our community a safer and more welcoming place for all people. We are in the process of building a civic engagement group at JCP so that we can be part of the change that is needed to right the wrongs of hundreds of years of American history. We're joining with a Muslim community called the Peace Islands Institute to engage in a Jewish-Muslim dialogue, to share our sacred traditions and hear each other's stories. And we continue our efforts to give back to the larger community through volunteering and service. We encourage you to be part of any and all of these important efforts and hope that you and your families will participate. Now is the time. As Rabbi Tarfon says in the same Pirkei Avot text, the day is short and the work is plentiful and the laborers are tired, but the reward is great and the head of the house is pressing. The work can't wait. What Hillel knew, and what I hope we can internalize now, is that standing up for ourselves and being there for others are not mutually exclusive. Though I know it might sometimes feel that way, given the polarization of our world. These days, we are often presented with tired binaries. We're taught that you can be either pro-Israel or pro-Palestine. You can either believe that Black Lives Matter or that Israel has a right to exist. You can either be politically progressive or Zionist. You can either be politically conservative or anti-Zionist. But Hillel asks us to reject these binaries and embrace the complexity of holding multiple truths simultaneously. We're not used to it, and it takes practice, but it is worth the effort in order to live in a world where our Jewish identities can be fully realized and where all people are accorded that same opportunity and that same dignity. And it's up to us, for if not now, when? I wish everyone a Shana Tova, a sweet and healthy new year, and Gemar Chatima Tova. May you be written in the book of life for a year of blessings. Amen. We continue with the Chatzi Kaddish on page 579.
Yitgadash Shemei Rabbam Me'alma Divrachirutei Ve'yamlich Malachotei Bechayechon Uvyomechon Uchayei Dechol Beit Yisrael Bar Gala Uvizman Kariv Veimeru Amen Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevorach Le'olam Ulamei Amayah Yitbarach Ve'yishtabach Ve'yitpa'ar Ve'yitromam Ve'yitnaseh Ve'yitadar Ve'yitaleh Ve'yitalal Shemei Dekudesha Bericho Le'ela Le'ela Mikol Birchata Ve'shirata Tushvechata Be'nechemata Damiran Ve'olama Ve'imeru Amen.
We continue with this silent Amidah, an opportunity for silent prayer and reflection. The Amidah, the words of the Amidah begin on page 580. Of course, we invite you to pray the words on the page or the reflections and meditations of your heart. continue with the vocalized repetition of the Amidah beginning on page 468.
מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה מתים אתה רב להושיע. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיה מתים ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים ומתיר אסורים ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה. מי כמוך אב הרחמים, זוכר יצוריו לחיים ברחמים, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני,
ברוך שמו,
מחיי המתים.
We turn now in our mahzors to page 582. Rabbi Deena opens the ark again, and now, as it holds the Sefer Torah, I invite you to think of that ark with its doors open as the book of life. This powerful poem, Unatana Tokef, declares the powerful holiness of this day and counts one by one through the book of memories the deeds of the last year, and then dares to ask aloud, like a shepherd counts one's flock, how many shall pass away, how many shall be born, who shall live, and who shall die. Our actions count, they are recorded, and in Unatana Tokef, we dare to beg for another year of life and well-being.
Unatana Tokef kedushat Hayyom ki honora v'Hayyom uvo tinaseh malchutecha v'hikon bechesed kisecha v'teshev alav be'emet emet כי אתה הוא דיין מוכיח ויודע בהר וחותם וסופר ומונה ונזכר כל הנשכחות ותפתח את ספר הזיכרונות ומעליו יקרא וחותם יד כל אדם בו ובשופר גדול יתקע וכל דממה דקה יישמע ומלאכים יחפזון וחיל ורדה יוחזון יאמרו הנה יום הדין לפקוד על צבא מרום בדין כי לא יזכו בעיניך בדין כי לא יזכו בעיניך בדין וכל בוי עולם יעברון לפניך כבני מרון כבני מרון כבקרת רועה דרו מעביר צאנו תחת שבטו כבקרת רועה דרו מעביר צאנו תחת שבטו כן תעביר ותספור ותמנה ותפקוד נפש כל חי ותחתוך קצפה לכל פרייה ותכתוב את גזר דינם בראש השנה יקזהון וביום צום כיפור יחתמון בראש השנה יקטבון וביום צום כיפור יחתמון כמה יעברון Tzom Kippur yechatemon, Berosh Hashanah yikatemon, Ubiyom Tzom Kippur yechatemon. Mehi vekitzo, umi lo vekitzo, mi vahesh, umi bamayim, mi vachelev, umi vachaya, mi varav, mi vatzama, mi varash, umi b'magfa, mi v'chanika, umi v'sekila. Berosh Hashanah yikatemon, Ubiyom Tzom Kippur yechatemon. Berosh Hashanah yikatemon, Ubiyom Tzom Kippur yechatemon. Mi yanuach, mi yanuach, mi yishaket, mi yitaref, mi yishalev, mi yityaser, mi yani, mi yasher, mi yanuach, mi yanuach, mi yishaket, mi yitaref, mi yishalev, mi yityaser, mi yani, mi yasher, mi yishafel, mi yarum.
We continue with the Kedusha, part of the Amidah, on page 473.
Uteshuva, utefila, utedaka, mavirin et roha agesera. נעריצך ונקדישך, כזאת שיח שרפי קודש, המקדישים את שמך בקודש, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ, כבודו. כבודו, מלאי עולם, משרתיו, שואלים זה לזה, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hu Eloheinu, Hu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu, Hu Moshienu, Vehu Yashmienu, Berachamav, Shenit Leinei Kol Achai. Liot lachem lelohim, ani Adonai Elohechem. Adir, Adireinu, Adonai, Adonainu, Ma'adir Shimcha bechol haaretz. Ve'aya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz. Bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. Uvdivrei kodshecha katuv lemor imloch Adonai leolam Elohayich Tzion ledor vador. Hallelujah. Ledor vador. Ledor vador. Ledor vador. Ledor vador. Ledor vador. Nagid God lecha. Ledor vador. Ledor vador. Ledor vador. Ledor vador. Ledor vador. Nagid God lecha. Olenetzach netzachim. Olenetzach netzachim. Kedushatcha nagdish Nishcha Eloheinu. Mipino lo yamush leolam vaed. Ledor vador. Ledor vador. Ledor vador. Ledor vador. Ledor vador. Nagid God lecha. Ledor vador. Ledor vador. Ledor vador. Ledor vador. Nagid God lecha. Ki el melech gadol, gadol vekadosh, gadol vekadosh ata. Ki el melech gadol, gadol vekadosh, gadol vekadosh ata. Baruch atah Adonai, Baruch Shemo, Hamelech HaKadosh. Amen.
We turn to Ochila Lael, insert number 6 in your prayer book.
Ochila Lael, Achalefonav, Yeshalam imenu, Maneh Lashon, Asher Mikal HaMashira Uzo, Aviyar Nanot, Be'ad Mifalav, Le'adam me'orchei lev, u'me'Adonai me'anei lashon. Adonai שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך. יהיו לרצון אמרי פי ויגון ליבי לפניך. אדוני צורי וגואלי.
We continue just like on Rosh Hashanah with the great Alinu, where we humble ourselves so much as to prostrate fully in front of the open ark. And as Cantor Galeet said last week, if you want to join us, now is a good time. No one's around, no one's watching. You could try it out, you could see how it feels. It's a very powerful experience. And the great Alinu is on page 604.
שנתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו We continue now with Shema Kolenu. It's on page 497, where we ask God to hear our prayers and be open to our pleas and to listen to us on this day of Yom Kippur. תיקח ממני Before we begin the series of the day's confessionals, we remind God of our relationship. We say, we are your people, you are our God, you are our sovereign, our parent, we're connected. So we ask that you have mercy on us. We turn to page 500, Ki Anu Amecha.
Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu Imotenu, Selach lanu mecha lanu kapela anu, ki anu amecha ve'ata Eloheinu, anu vanecha ve'ata Avinu, anu avadecha ve'ata Adonenu, anu ke'alecha ve'ata chelkeinu, anu nachalatecha ve'ata goraleinu, anu tzomnecha ve'ata roheinu, anu chalmecha ve'ata noteinu, anu ve'ulatecha ve'ata yotzeinu, anu rayatecha ve'ata dodeinu, anu segulatecha ve'ata keroveinu, anu amecha ve'ata malkeinu, anu mamirecha ve'ata mamireinu.
Before we read the ancient words of the Yom Kippur confessional, I want to offer us a modern rendition. We focused inward, narrowing our vision. We were preoccupied with ourselves. We turned our backs on the poor and defenseless. We were contemptuous of the weak. We tolerated violence, neglect, and exploitation. We told ourselves there was nothing we could do. We wasted resources of the earth. We denied our own responsibility and put it out of our minds. We kept silent when we should have spoken out. We gave in to cynicism and despair. We sought entertainment instead of enlightenment. We were lazy, indifferent, and callous. We forgave ourselves too easily for our failures. We forgot that we always have a choice. We begin the confessional with Anu Azefanim into Ashamnu on page 501.
Anu azefanim ve'atarach v'chanon, anu keshe oref ve'atar rabayim, anu melehei avon ve'ata malei rachamim, anu yameinu ketzel over ve'ata ushnotecha lo itamu. Eloheinu, Elohei avotenu ve'imoteinu, tavo lefanecha tefilatenu ve'al titalam mitchinatenu, shein anu azefanim ukshei oref loma lefanecha Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu, tzadikim anachnu ve'lo chatanu, aval anachnu chatanu. Ay da 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 da, ay da 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 da, ay da da da. Ay, da, 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 ay, da, da, da. בגדנו, גזלנו, דיברנו דופי,
We turn to page 488 for the long confessional Al Chet. For the refrain, you can find it on page 491, Va'al kulam Eloha slichot, slach lanu, forgive us, pardon us, and grant us atonement.
Le'al kulam Eloha slichot, selach lanu, mecha lanu, kaper lanu. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha.
For the sin we committed willingly or unwillingly. For the sin we committed by not thinking. For the sin we committed in public or in private. For the sin we committed in wronging another.
Selach lanu, mecha lanu, kaper lanu. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha.
For the sin we committed in joining in depravity.
Al chet shechatanu lefanecha.
For the sin we committed by contempt for our parents and our teachers. For the sin we committed by wielding power. For the sin we committed with an evil impulse. For the sin of slander. For the sin of haughtiness. for the sin of stubbornness,
ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך,
for the sin of baseless hatred,
ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו,
We continue on page 580 as we sanctify this day of Yom Kippur.
וטהר ליבנו לתורתך, לדבק ליבנו במצוותיך, ויחל לבבינו לאהבה וליראה את שמך, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד. אדוני, מוחל וסולח לעוונותינו, לעוונות עמו בית ישראל, ומעביר על שמותינו מכל שנה ושנה. מלך על כל הארץ, מקדש ישראל. מלך על כל הארץ, מקדש ישראל. מלך על כל הארץ, מקדש ישראל. ויום הכיפורים.
Amen. Page 483.
וכתוב לחיים טובים כל בני בריתך.
We turn now to the priestly blessing on page 484, our ancient blessing of safety and protection and peace. We invite you to gather with your loved ones and to ready yourself to receive this blessing.
אלוהינו ואלוהי, אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, ברכנו בברכה משולשת אמורה מפי אהרון ובניו. יברכך אדוני וישמרך.
כן יהי רצון.
יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויקונך.
כן יהי רצון.
יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום. כן יהי רצון.
May God bless you and keep you. May God's presence always be with you and be gracious to you. May God be with you always and grant you the gift of peace. We turn to page 485. B'Sefer Hayyom, may we be written in the book of life.
בספר חיים ברכה ושלום ופרנסה טובה. ניזכר וניכתב לפניך. אנחנו
turn to page 650, we recite Hayyom, which means today, and we recite all of our pleas and our hopes for today and throughout the year ahead.
Hayyom, 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 Hayyom te'amtzeinu, Amen. Hayyom, 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 Hayyom tevarcheinu, Amen. Hayyom, 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 Hayyom tegadleinu, Amen. Hayyom, 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 Tidreshenu letova, Amen. Hayyom, 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 Tichtevenu lechaim tovim, Amen. Hayyom, 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 Teshamesh Shabbatenu, Amen. Hayyom, 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 תקבל ברחמים וברצון את תפילתנו, אמן. היום, 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 תתמכנו במן צדקך, אמן. היום, 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 תמחול ותסלח לכל עוונותינו, אמן.
At this sacred time of year, we think of those who are no longer with us, but whose memories, values, and lessons help to guide our reflections on this Yom Kippur. At JCP, we remember Paul Moore, Rick Thompson, Judy Golden, Robert Thirschwell, Donald Zellman, Adam Schwartz, Diane Parker, Molly Letterman, David Parker, Ron Goldberg, Lillian Goldberg, Jerome Goldberg, Leon Parker, Thelma, Dodie, Isabel, Lily, Luvila, Abe, Abraham, Evelyn, Finnbauer, Geert Geertsen, Anita Meltzer, Alan Rosenberg, Eunice Wertheim, Marcia Mattal, Leanne Rucklamer, Mitchell Datz, Robin Hope Weissman, Diane Weissman, Herbert Weissman, Arnold Gottlieb, Richard Sarnoff, Seymour Sarnoff, Julian Cohen, Aaron Eisenstadt, Gladys Eisenstadt, and of course, we also remember all of those who you are thinking about today and who you're holding in your hearts. Please join in on the mourners' Kaddish on page 324. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah. Ve'alma divrach erutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayechon uvyomechon v'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevarach Le'olam U'Olmei Olmaya. Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh, V'yithadar, V'yitale, V'yithalal, Shemei Dekudesha Brichu. Le'ela U'le'ela, Mikol Birchata V'shirata, Tushbechata V'nechemata, Da'amiran Be'alma V'imru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shmaya, V'chaim Tovim Alinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom Bimrumav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Alinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel V'imru Amen. Zichronam Livracha, may their memories be for a blessing. As our morning service comes to a close, I want to thank everyone on the JCP team, all of us who are here, all of us behind the scenes, our staff, Stacy Pollock, our board president, our board of directors, all of you who make up our community, the FLEE team, our sound and video team. None of this would be possible without everyone's support. I hope you'll join us this afternoon as we continue this Yom Kippur, this Day of Atonement. We'll be on Zoom at 3:45 with some interactive, great text study for Yom Kippur. At 5:30 on YouTube, we'll have a Yizkor memorial service to remember loved ones who have passed away. And at 6:30, we will conclude Yom Kippur with our Ne'ilah service, which is also on YouTube. I want to wish everyone Gemar Chatima Tova. May you be sealed in the book of life for a good year ahead. We wish you a meaningful and an easy fast. We'll continue with Kaddish Shalem on page 652, followed by Achat Sha'alti.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
אמן.
בעלמד יברח יודי וימליך בחודי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בגלה בזמן קריב ימרו. אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעלמי עולמיה. יתברך. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי תקודשה. בריחו. ושירתה תשפחתה ונחמתה תמירן בעלמה וימרו. אמן. תתקבל את צאן הון ובת הון לכל בית ישראל קדם אהון וישמעיה וימרו. אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמעיה וחיים טובים עלינו ועל כל ישראל וימרו. אמן. הוא עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל וימרו.
We'll conclude with Achat Sha'alti from Psalm 27. One thing I ask of you, O God, this is what I seek, to be in your presence forever, to sit in your glorious temple.